This is the Sacred Site Podcast, based off of the documentary series of the same name, true tales of megalithic and pyramid hunting and finding the hidden truth of our past with your host, Loomis.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Sacred Site Podcasts. This is episode number 3, Pila's Pyramid, part 3 also. And thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Loomis. The website for this is sacredsite.info. I didn't plug this on the last 2 episodes, just absent-minded, but sacredsite.info is the website for not only this show, but of course the documentary. But if you want to see the bulk of my work, chanitdownradio.com is my website for the podcast I've been doing for 12 and a half years, and that's a big part of my work and journey. But Sacred Site, the documentary, if you haven't seen it, you probably want to hit that up first before you go into this one here because, I'm going to give you spoilers because now we're getting into the terrain of when I filmed it. Sacred Site is my first film, but yes, hard at work at season 2 of Sacred Site. So this is really, Sacred Site is really coming about. So eventually I figured this podcast will fill up, but this is just a storytelling podcast. And where we were last time is I had already gone and done a journey with Seb Land trying to find the pyramid, and we got rained out. And so then I had linked up with Zach Royer, and we finally got a date pinned down, and we had enough supplies for 2 days. I flew in from Oahu. The day I arrived, Seb picked me up, and we went to Zach Royer's house, and they met for the first time, and we became a trio of explorers. It's always a worry a little bit because when you have 2 friends who've never met each other, you hope that they're going to get along. You hope that they're going to be on the same wavelength, and luckily they were, so that was not a problem at all. And we went straight into a journey, but not the journey to find Pila's pyramid. Because I had arrived this day, we decided to just spend this day looking for a different pyramid site. It's not in the documentary. It's off of a YouTube video. These 2 guys claim that they found a pyramid, and we're more on the stance of debunkers with it, but we wanted to find it. But they don't divulge the place where it is, so that's another adventure for another time. Turned out to be unfruitful, unfortunately, but we did spend the day scouting and hiking, and maybe it was just a good warm-up for what we were about to do the following day. So the following day, I slept on Zach's couch, who lives near the airport, and Seb lives like about an hour and a half south, close to the excursion actually. So woke up in the morning, at dawn, and it's just first light, loading stuff in the back of the car, and we see a UFO in the sky. It's a large, moving, shiny object. I don't know what it was. Definitely lower than just almost at plane level, really. But it's flying exactly the direction we were heading, and we're starting to think, well, maybe that's a little nod that we're going the right direction. But who knows? But we're no strangers to UFOs. I'm not, and neither is Zach. Zach actually does skywatching tours on the Big Island for tourists. So if you happen to be on the Big Island, you might want to look up Zach Royer. He might be able to take you check out some skywatching. See if you can see UFOs for yourself. So anyway, we drove that hour and a half after a coffee stop. Then we met up with Seb, and then Seb's dad dropped us off at a point we felt would be a good launching spot for the hike. I also, at this particular time, Zach had got a text from a UFO researcher named James Gilliand. I forget what it was pertaining to. I just remember Zach got it, and so it's like, oh, hey, you know who that guy is? I know who he is too. But anyway, we're at the hike, and this is the point in which you can see in the documentary. We have our packs on. I know mine was pretty heavy. I kind of try to gear up for any scenario if I can, just out of experience. I do try to get my packs as light as possible. But yes, I had, a water filter in there, and that's one of the most important things in case we come across any streams for more drinking water. It's a pouch. You attach a filter to it and squeeze the dirty water through that filter, and you have clean water. It's a pretty busy or rainy area. So it was great for that, except for the fact that we were having a very dry, rainy season. In fact, we were just in a drought, basically. So Seb happened to have an extra gallon of water from his dad. Never hurts, So it was one of those ones with the plastic handle, and they're pretty strong handles. If you live in America, you probably know what I'm talking about. So we all kind of took turns holding it. Never hurts to have more water. So we were walking up pasture land that's uphill, and the morning sun was reflecting off the ocean far down below us as we walked through this pasture land. And, where we're heading toward is the beginning of a deep forest at the end of this pasture land. That's the goal. Based on maps, we studied the night before and decided this direction we were heading was the most agreeable with what Pila said in his book and some energy grid maps that Zach had. I forget what you call these energy grids. But these energy spots are actually mapped out by flight radar, by pilots, because it can affect equipment in things like small planes and helicopters. And so it seemed like the good place to go where this one particular energy spot was. What a great place to put a pyramid. And, the islands themselves are magnetic. They have, lava. So anyway, that's the direction we were heading. And then eventually we intervened with a farm road, and it was easier terrain, so we walked on that for a while, and we were making good headway until a truck came up behind us. And it was actually a bad idea to be on that road because the guy, I figured out he was like a farmhand in the truck, told us we needed to leave because we're on private property. He wanted us all to go all the way down the road and back out the gate we'd hopped over, even though it said no, it didn't say anything about trespassing. But, and I should have known better. I was like, oh, we shouldn't have been walking on the road. We just kind of got carried away. And the problem with going all the way back down that road and out the gate is that would have thwarted all of our progress going toward that deep forest we wanted to enter. So we said we would leave, but when he left, we headed left. We decided to head toward a mountain on the side of a pasture land. I wouldn't call it a mountain, but it was a prominent uprise. It was a hill, and then it turns into like a flat-topped, low mountain. But yeah, so we figured if we're going up there and he comes back, he can't really kick us off of that. We thought, because we're going into the forest, he's never going to see us again, because the top of this mountain was forested. But there was no trail up this mountainside, and it wasn't a huge mountain. The side we were climbing was maybe a little over 1,000 feet, but it was slippery mud, and we had heavy packs on, 2 days worth of supplies with heavy packs, and I happened to be carrying that damn extra gallon of water, and so I kept throwing it in front of me so I could make progress and walk toward uphill. I could walk uphill with it. But it was a hindrance. It was really hindering my progress. And I think too, to make it more hectic, is I think we were kind of frantic to get up this mountain because we didn't want the farmhand to come back and see us climbing the mountain, then call the cops. And who knows? Maybe they would have got helicopters on us. I don't know. So I managed to give the water jug to Seb, who was in front of me, and he carried it and made it to the top of the side of this mountain. And the problem was we were in the middle of pasture lands on top of a forested mountain, and we were safe up there, but if we went back down, we might be spotted and kicked off for trespassing again. So we carried up on this, we continued up on this flat-topped mountain, and the problem was we really expended a lot of energy doing that extra mountain climb. And so we went through our water supply a lot faster than we should have. And so there was no streams around either. They were all dry. So, but the plan was to continue to go up and over this mountain to head toward the deep forest we wanted to get to. And that's where we thought the pyramid might be. The problem was we had gone up a mountain, and the other sides toward the direction we wanted to go were too steep. We wanted to scale back down, but they were just too steep. And so we're like in head-high ferns, no trail. And suddenly we look over, and we just see a cow on the top of this mountain in the middle of pasture land. Luckiest cow in the world. I mean, probably escaped the slaughter, I'm assuming. I don't know. But hey, so that was kind of funny. But the problem is we wasted a lot more energy trying to find a way back down this mountain. So we thought, well, let's head back the other way. We'd passed an opening before in the forest. It was like kind of like a dry meadow, and it had no trees, and it kind of had like a nice, window. It looked like a great place to put a camp, and we thought maybe that would be the best place to do so. We had our hammocks, and we had trees to string them up on, and then in the middle of that meadow was a perfect place to build a fire. So I think I was extra discouraged at this point. I don't live on that island, so I had to fly out the next day late, and we had wasted a whole day finding nothing. And I guess one of my flaws is I get stuck focusing. As I get older, I realize that it does me good a lot of times, but my expectations were really high, to find this pyramid, because at first when I heard about it, I'm like, oh yeah, well, I'll put it in my documentary, But as time grew, I'm like realizing how history changing and groundbreaking it is to find a pyramid in Hawaii. I mean, it's said that there's none here. So, we're pioneers in this field, basically trying to find this lost pyramid. And I was determined to find it. But I don't live on the island, and it's not a journey I can always do. And, my time was limited, and we were nowhere closer to finding this pyramid than when we started. So I was feeling a bit, discouraged. But my discouragement started to subside. I mean, all of our energy was used up. We have to rest. And I was starting to just enjoy the setting. And sometimes, it's not about the getting there. It's about the journey getting there. And that's something that I had to sort of rest easy with. So we gathered wood for a fire. And, this is at the point where we cooked dinner. And Zach hadn't really brought enough water. I think he'd gone through his too much. So had all of us, really. But at least we had that extra gallon. But we were getting pretty low. And it might have been annoying to carry that extra gallon, but I'm glad we had it. So as we settled into the night with a nice fire, the stars are out, it's a real nice evening, I decided it would be good to do an outdoor podcast. I had this little mic. I thought we could pass it around and just, talk about it. And so during this little podcast I did, Zach, he had texted earlier, because we were kind of like, I wonder if that guy, James Gillian, the researcher, UFO researcher, would know anything about the pyramid, because he's kind of friends with the fringe community of the island, and you'd think maybe he'd heard something. So Zach had texted him about it, to ask him, and if he'd heard of Pila's pyramid. We're kind of just, desperate, clutching at straws. We need something. And so during this little podcast we're doing, James replies back. And he says that he'd heard from a monk who tried to get to it that there were men with guns and dogs guarding it. And he said that it was overgrown and hard to find, and that's all he knew. And so that was interesting. It's kind of like breaking news during the actual podcast. And you can see all this in the documentary. And you can actually hear the podcast I was doing during that time. It's actually episode 292 of Chant It Down. So you can listen to that if you've never heard it before. So it's interesting that we're talking to a UFO researcher and texting, and then we see UFOs ourselves coming over us. A few UFOs started to come over, and what these look like were they were definitely shiny objects. Some of them were flashing at us. Some of them were, smaller. Some of them were bigger. They were going all directions, and they were not super low, but maybe at the altitude of a high flying plane level at first. And then a few UFOs later, a huge bright one came over us, a lot lower, and it powered up at us. And what I mean by power up meaning that it shined its light, it expanded, and its light burst through. It's kind of hard to explain, but it expanded its light and showed it, and it even turned red. So, and it was lower than all those others, and it blew our minds. You would have had to been there, but the closest you can be to being there is to listen to episode 292, or hey, go out, do it yourself, see what you see. A lot of people don't even try. But anyway, that blew our minds. And so all in all, I think we saw about 12 or 14 of them that night, and that was a nice nightcap. We were pretty tired. Good way to go to sleep. It was cold that night. We're at higher elevation, even though we're in Hawaii. It's November and we're at higher elevation, and I felt like I probably not brought enough. And I think it was Seb or Zach that got woken up to that random cow, trampled by one of their hammocks. Pretty loud, rumbling ground as it shook the ground as it ran by. So that was probably kind of a rude awakening. I didn't hear that, but so anyway, next morning we packed up and we went down the mountain. And the problem is we were desperately needing water. We were, thirsty in the morning, and we needed water. So the mission became trying to find some water. And the only thing we could spot was, down below, back in those pasture lands, we could see cattle feeding in troughs in the pasture lands. And so below, right where we were the day before. So we decided, well, I had my filter, so that's maybe the best option. And so instead, we ended up finding a tank full of hose water that cattle were not drinking out of, and it's a lot cleaner. And so we did that. We got hydrated, took a break, and unfortunately, the day's getting on already, and Seb really just had to go be back with his family. He has young kids, and I don't think he was able to do the rest of the journey, and so it seemed like he just had to go. So we had to back out the gate we had trespassed into and to the road, and we were pyramidless and dirty and tired, but it still, what a great night. But yeah, no pyramid. So after departing from Seb, Zach and I had all day still to explore. I mean, I didn't have to fly out till late that night, so I didn't want to give up, and neither did he. So what we did is we went to a vantage point that Zach knew of, and we looked the direction of what Pila had described in his book. So we basically went back to square one and okay, well, maybe that little mountain thing over there is that pyramid. So, and it just might be it. So we had to figure out how to get to it, but we're like, well, we'll just head over to that direction and just see what happens. And so that became the next mission. Is we just had to, regroup with everything and decide what direction to go next. And so that'll be the next episode of Sacred Site. Thank you for listening, and this journey continues. And what I thought at first this journey would be turned into quite a journey, and it became more and more important to find Pila's pyramid. And so if you enjoy this and you're enjoying, these tales and stuff, and you want to help support in any way possible, there is a Patreon for the show, Chant It Down, that I do, but also another way is you can donate on the GoFundMe for the future of Sacred Site. As these seasons go on, the discoveries become more awesome and real. So thank you all for listening to Sacred Site podcast. It's new, it's an experiment, but it's easy. I like telling stories, and these are, part of the journey. So the journey to find more megaliths in pyramids in the world and change history. Until then, see you next time.